Hi there. This is Scott Marker. This is another episode of Treasure Valley NIA Quick Tips. What this is, I'm the franchise owner of a network and action franchise. It's a once a month professional networking groups I run. It's out of Houston, Texas. I was number 27. Now we have a lot of us across the United States and also in four other countries. Just people like me getting like-minded experts in their field together, trying to help us grow our businesses. And through that, I meet a lot of high caliber people, experts in their field here in the Treasure Valley, Idaho. And I decided to come up with a podcast so I could share their expertise. Today's a perfect example. Joseph, introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Joseph. I'm the founder of Strategic Wealth Designs. I'm a certified exit planner and wealth strategist.
Awesome. Yeah, I've known you now for a while and consider you a friend. And I love what you do, but it's one of those things where when somebody says, "Hey, I'm a run a plumbing company. I'm a plumber." People kind of know what you do,
Hmm. Yeah.
and what you do is just kind of different. So, when it comes to what overall, what would you say that you do? I mean, if someone said in a little short little elevator, what's what's your expertise?
Oh, I wish I could have put that in 30 seconds. Usually it's what
Yeah,
goes into that. So, basically for business owners, I help them maximize their value, mitigate the risk, and map out the process so they can eventually exit their business.
perfect, perfect. So how would someone like you get into something like that?
It started out as a financial advisor, and I realized there was a disconnect between the work that was being done for business owners on the front end. They would sell them some insurance and set up a 401k, and all those things are much necessary, but they wouldn't necessarily take it a step further and say, hey, what are you going to do upon the eventual exit of your business?
Right,
Because you've heard me say this, Scott, there's a
yeah,
100% chance you're going to exit your business, but either by default or design. And
right,
so having those conversations with business owners I've been passionate about because they're not having them. And there's a huge disconnect and need for them to be able to be educated around this idea of exit planning.
right. Yeah. So now we'll start off with kind of at the beginning. So what's the like a foundation of a good, effective business planning when you're first starting out with the business?
Definitely. I think if you think about business and personal transition planning, it really starts with the business value, understanding that valuation, because if it's
Right,
going to pave the way for your retirement, it's going to, and that's where the bulk of your assets come into, then understanding that is really vital and important to get those pillars right. So that really lays the foundation for understanding the succession planning, the retirement planning, and the estate planning that comes out of understanding that.
so you lay that out first, like doing a business plan, and then how how does that transition into like, so you got a business going, you're all excited, you've been doing it now for, you know 5 years, things are going well. I mean, now, and you're, you're still 40 years old. Why do you need to start thinking about exit planning or anything? You know, any that type of stuff. When do you do that? I mean, you're the expert on that. I mean, a lot of people think, I got another 20 years. I want to do this.
Absolutely, and I love the business owners that want to die at their desk or die in the business. There's a study that says about 10% of owners will actually want to never walk away from their business. But
Right.
like I said, there's a 100% chance you're going to exit your business. I think really it comes down to it's just any type of planning for the future. The earlier start, the better options that you have. Selling a business is not selling like selling a home. You can't slap some paint on it and say, here, I'm going to wake up one day and sell. It does
Right.
take some time because the buyers are going to come in. And I don't mean to put this crassly, but they're going to call your baby ugly. And
Right.
it's not any disrespect to you. It's just they want to make sure that they're getting the value that it's worth. And so the earlier you start in understanding what goes into the eventual exit, whether it's keeping your key employees engaged, thinking potentially about stay bonuses, driving that value up. So there's two types of business owners. There's kind of a lifestyle business owner, and that's kind of those who think today and think, okay, what is my lifestyle going to afford for me? And then there's those who think about the value. How can I constantly increase the value? So it's really finding that balance between living for today and planning for tomorrow. But I've said this to people. Exit planning is or exit planning is options planning. It gives you options the earlier you start. So that's why it's very important, even for a 40-year-old who may be 25 years out. What do you need to do? Because even on the retirement, studies have shown that most business owners have less than $500,000 in their retirement accounts. And I think there's an over reliance on what the business is going to afford them in retirement.
Oh, yep, yep. Like I said, this topic over the last few years has kind of been something that's, um, well, I'd say more than that. Just like at least maybe it's one of those things where I had a friend of mine that had a company and he sold it. And so, and he had a radio show and he used to talk about, you know, planning ahead before you leave your business and stuff like that. And I didn't know it, but the whole time he's talking about it, he's actually doing it.
Oh,
He hired somebody and he kept a complete secret, because he was trying to sell his business and didn't want anybody to know, didn't want his employees to know and all that type of stuff. But since then, it's really made me think about the importance of it because I can just see a business owner, um, you know, uh, at 40 years old going, what? Hey, I'll talk to you in another 10 years, Joseph. I don't need that. And then in another 10 years going, I'll talk to you in another 5 years. And then all of a sudden he or she is getting burned out. Let's say it's a she, and she's lost her passion. And and all of a sudden she wakes up one day and says, I don't want to do this anymore.
hmm
And then you tell me just me thinking, but you might have taken your focus off your business and it might have talking about the valuations. Your company might have slid. You might have lost some key team players. Your retention might not be as good. I mean, just all because you didn't have anything planned. So what have you seen on that?
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, there are people who just wake up one day and say, I'm tired, and they don't get the value of it because it becomes a fire sale. They're either
Right,
selling liquid assets. Depending on where they are in the business cycle, they may or may not be able to get that full value, even if they could find a ready and willing and able buyer.
right,
But it really comes down to, are they able to find a ready and able and willing buyer for the terms that you set forth, within reason, of course.
right, right,
And that's where it is, because I was working with a business owner and they were not quite ready to exit. They were in a growth phase, but they're willing to or wanting to buy a complementary business to their business. And the gentleman was in his 70s, took the foot off the pedal, and the value wasn't there what he wanted. He thought it was worth 4, and it was worth 2.2, and they were willing to even give him 3. So I mean, even though the value wasn't there, they felt it was a good investment, and he wouldn't budge. And we ended up walking away from that particular opportunity. And so that just, because he was kind of stubborn and not prepared for it, he didn't get a sale. I mean, 2.2 would have been better than nothing.
right, right,
But so that's, yeah. So not being prepared and thinking about some of those intangibles, are you working 60 to 80 hours in the business still? And if you are, you may not have a sellable business to the degree that you want because it relies on you too much, as
right,
opposed to, hey, I may be 40 now, but at 65, I know I need to think about maybe 20 hours a week. And this business has got to run without me, and making sure your key employees are set in place and your management team can run it without you.
and is that part of good succession planning is I'm sure it is, but like in your
Mhm.
experience is thinking that exact thing is like, okay, you have a team. Now, can you take 3 weeks off and have it still run?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's part of what goes into the succession plan. So a succession plan is going to identify goals.
Yeah.
So what do you want to get out of your business when you retire? And there's 3 universal goals that every business owner is going to have to face. It's how much, when, and to whom are you going to sell? And that's really kind of that succession planning piece, because who is your successor? Are they prepared for you for them to take it over? What is your role in that? Do you have a key employee group, and what is their ownership responsibilities, and what are their pieces of the pie you're going to adhere to? Because do you give more ownership to one versus the other depending on what they're doing? Again, even if you don't have a key employee group or the management team is not going to be the key employee group, is that set in place? So can you take a 3-week vacation? Do your vendors know? Do your clients know that these people are your team and that's going to be a part of it? And then what is that timeline? Again, exit planning, I think it's a bad rap or at least a bad concept because it's like, oh, I've got to have an end date in mind. No, that could be
Right.
fluid. You could want to retire at 65, but things are going well. Maybe you push out to 70, or hey, I'm really tired. I thought 65 was going to be an option, and
Right.
I want to retire in the next 3 years.
Right.
And then finances. Again, that's kind of going into what are your finances, not only on the personal but for the business.
So tell me, like for you, who's like a perfect client that you can help? I mean, like what do they look like? What type of business? And then give an example of one, and then if you met with them, what would you do for them? And then how long would that engagement be?
So, I mean, that's really tough and what they to kind of define. As far as businesses, typically anybody that's minimally, it's got to be $1 million in revenue. I mean, I'll
Okay.
talk to other people and stuff. It's just easier to get a value as opposed to something that's $250,000.
Right. Right.
It's a little harder to come up with unique solutions just because to put it this way, the juice isn't worth the squeeze.
Right. Right.
But I'm working with a local company here in Nampa, and they're looking to exit between 3 to 8 years, which is an interesting dynamic because the husband wants 8, the wife wants 3, and so they're both into it together. And so now we're trying to figure that out. But then they've also have their goals. They want to be able to lease the land and get a certain amount of income. And I've been wrestling with that idea, not because it's a bad idea from a financial perspective, it'll hit. But now I'm thinking, okay, what are the tax implications?
Right.
So, it's somebody who's willing to open up their world, I guess, as a client that wants to make changes, wants to think about the future, and what do I need to do to get the value that I need to exit their business? Because this gentleman, this particular business thought their business was worth, and we did an informal business valuation again for planning purposes, and
Right.
they thought they was worth 1.5. It came in just under $1 million.
Yeah.
And now $500,000 is not a whole big deal because they were forward thinking. They've got properties out of state, and so now we're trying to make sure that their estate plan is squared away.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know if that
Right.
answered your question.
Well, that's one thing is you kind of help them. I guess you're helping them kind of get everything in order. I mean,
Hmm.
I mean, and kind of, and what they have to think about because, like you said, um, I mean, it started with talking about the business, but the next thing you know, they start talking about, oh, we have these other properties over here, and we have to have land here, and that all affects, your succession plan.
Hmm. And they've got 2 kids, so where does that go into? Thankfully, the kids aren't in the business, so it makes the estate equalization a lot
Right.
better. But let's
Okay.
assume they did have one kid in the business, and so they're getting, and in many ways, you can put it this way: they're getting in their inheritance early. They have to put in the sweat equity. But
Right.
what if that, let's just call them 2 sons. Son A is in the business, and son B is not in the business, and yet they split the business 50-50. Now, son A is doing all the work, and yet son
Right.
B is getting 50% of the profit. That may seem unfair to son A because he's doing all the work. So
Right.
that comes into it. So, I like the way you said, I am, the way I kind of put it is to use the old game I used to play is I'm playing Tetris with the pieces and just trying to
Yes.
make sure they work with them and then working and collaborating with other people, such as a business valuation expert, Jeremy Bernstein in the area,
Right.
or CPAs, and talking about some of those especially the forward thinking CPAs. Those are my favorite because they're not just crunching numbers and looking at today, but they're looking at the future. And then estate planning needs as well.
Right. So that goes into how do you help them with estate planning too?
So I can help them come up with ideas. So really, my role is I get, which is really kind of neat. So I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a CPA, but I can
Right.
flirt with the lines.
Right.
Like with tax, I can't give tax advice, but I can give tax ideas.
Right.
Hey, if let's just say they're charitably inclined, you could think about either a donor advised fund. Oh, but I need income from that, but I still need, I still want to be charitably inclined, but I need income today. Well, then what about a charitable remainder trust? So you can get that income you need today. You get a
Right.
huge tax benefit up front, and then you can give to charity. So it's one, understanding their goals, but those are things that I can come up with that may be thinking a little different because I'm not doing the tax planning of it. I'm doing the tax planning, but I'm not giving them advice on what's best. We will work with their attorneys and say, hey, and they may or may not have a better idea than I do, but
Right.
we can come up with different ideas. So I'm a generalist in many ways.
Right. But you're a generalist, but at the same time, you're touching a lot of things that it seems like you're touching a lot of different areas that some people might specialize in one piece of it,
Hmm.
but not looking at the holistic, because like just when you're just, talking about, selling your business down the line, and then that what does that look like and putting a plan in place and what you're going to do. And then you've talked about before, some people might not ask them about maybe they're really into their church and giving to their church, but not asking those questions like, well, would and then you explain that piece about how you can actually take part of if you sell a business, take a piece of it, somehow donate it and be able to have a tax benefit out of it.
Hmm. And
How
again, that's assuming they're charitably inclined, but
okay.
all that's got to go in the pre-planning work. You can't sit
Right.
there and say, oh, I'm selling it. Now I want a tax benefit. Oh, I'll just give.
Right. Right.
It's got to be able to be upfront. And that's where a lot of people may get themselves in trouble. Or, a lot of advisors, financial advisors, I love a good donor advised fund as anybody else, but, there's pros and cons to that. And what are the
Right.
legal ramifications that will come
Right.
up with that too? And understanding all that.
No, see, but that's again something that why they want to talk to you because that's something that nobody might have talked to them about, and that again, that's something you need to think about, in advance. And so talking with someone like you kind of helps them, I don't know, do a better job of planning.
Absolutely, and to your point, you just made me think of a client I met with last night. They have a small little business. They're young and they're 30s and 40s, and they're just starting out. But we're doing some personal planning as well, and they were at least had the forethought of getting a buy-sell agreement done. So there's two business
Oh,
owners,
there
which
we
is
go.
a lot of people don't. But the disconnect and where I'm going to be able to help kind of close some of those gaps or those holes is they didn't fund the disability. Excuse me. There's a lot of options in my head that I was thinking. They didn't fund the buy sell.
Okay.
And so how do you do that? There's five different ways. And so now I got to sit down, come back with them and say, hey, this is important because your shares, because there's two people, and yeah, it may not be worth much today, but especially if it gets worth more in the future,
Right.
that shares will go on to your spouse. Well, the attorney didn't talk through, and he may have done a good job. I'm going to review the buy sell. I have the opportunity to do that, but they didn't fund it, or at least come up with ideas to make sure that it's funded so they can buy out the other partner should one person pass away, disabilities, whatever, those kind of things that we need to go into it. So yeah, so that's kind of where I'm able to put my hands into everything and see it in a different light than just in the silo of the attorney. He may have come up with the best buy sell agreement in the world, but if it's not properly funded at that point, then it's moot.
Right. Yeah, you kind of seem like what you're doing is there's again, there's just a lot of experts out there. You have accountants, you have attorneys, financial planners, and all this stuff, affects their business. But a lot of times people just don't take the time to think about putting a plan together, maybe getting everyone talking to each other and
Hmm.
putting a plan together so that, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, and again, you said it's fluid. I get that things change and stuff, but still, at least you have a plan in place that you can make adjustments as you go. And then, if you everything works out perfect, I want to sell it in 10 years, at least you have a plan. I mean,
Yeah.
and you kind of know what you're going to do, and you have everybody, your accountant knows what you're going to be doing, your attorney knows what you're going to be doing, financial planner. So you're kind of a coordinator of all those different experts in a way sometimes, aren't you?
Yes. So that's a good way of putting it. It's because when I meet with business owners, I was met with one in Colorado, I don't know, 2 months ago, and he wanted to go to all his individual people. And I was like, you can do that. And
Right.
I think he ended up doing it. I don't know if we're going to do
Right.
any work together, but he seemed like a do-it-yourselfer kind of guy. But he was going to go talk to each of these individuals that you just mentioned
Right.
and and walk through this process with them. And I was like, but you're spending all this time as a business owner. You want to walk away, and they're retirement age. They're not young.
Right.
I mean, they're young, but not like 40. Um, you're spending all this time. You don't have to. Let me do that. Come
Right.
through, have conversation. Yeah, we'll have an initial meeting with all of us, but then we can come back and collaborate together in each of these silos and work through it because we've heard your goals, your dreams, your
Right.
desires, and
Right.
what you want to accomplish. So yes, that's the intent behind being an exit planner, is to work with everybody to make sure we're all on the same page. So that way we're not working independently in our silos.
Yeah, because I've heard over and over again that that does happen. That you know the attorney doesn't talk to the accountant doesn't talk to the attorney, and if they have a bookkeeper, the bookkeepers don't even. I mean, you think it'd be easy, but I mean, there's can be a disconnect even with that. So it's like, I guess, yeah, that's kind of what you are. Is you're kind of like an aggregator of all that, those
Mhm.
resources together, and kind of making sure everyone's going on the same page. Um, and then maybe one of those, because you're pretty connected with all those different things. I mean, maybe somebody has a great accountant and financial services person, but their attorney's weak. Maybe doesn't isn't very, I don't know what you want to for thinking. I mean, that's, and if they, I mean, if they bring you aboard and stuff like that, you can always help them find another attorney, correct? Or another piece of the puzzle if they have, if they're not happy with one of those, their accountant, their attorney, one of those, they're not happy with them, and they want to do this, um, exit planning. I mean, you have lots of resources. You can get them a new one, right? Find them a good new one.
Absolutely. And
Right.
and my intent is to be able to, I will work with them, meaning their particular
Right.
advisory board, I'll put it that way. But if their advisory board isn't competent
Right.
enough in that area, but no, and that's no disrespect, we all have our
Right.
specializations, et cetera, et cetera. Then yeah, I do connect people to my network, and I always make sure to make this up point. I know some people think about this, and I just want to make sure that when I do it, it's because I know, like, and trust them, not
Right.
because I'm getting some sort of kickback.
Right.
And I think that's important to kind of put out there, because I think there's a lot of people that have this, well, why using this person versus that person? I don't work on kickbacks or retainers, or in the sense of getting stuff back from referral partners.
Right.
So it's truly hands, third party, arm's length people.
Cool. So which one of your favorite type business owners to meet with? What stage?
Kind of that stage where they've come through the growth stage. They're either right at the end of that growth stage into the mature stage,
Okay.
because then it just, they're not stressing out about, every dollar that they've made is
Right.
is
Right.
being reinvested. And I can work with those type of people, and just have conversations. But those are kind of the most fun for me, just because you can see their passion come out. They're not too hurried and frazzled from, the startup stage of their
Right.
business. So that's kind of and I don't have a specialty in who I like, and I know that's kind of a pros and cons, but what I unique position I'm in is I get to meet so many unique business owners,
Right.
and really kind of I geek out on what type of business. I may know nothing about it in the sense of this or that, but um, like the ag world is very new to me, and so I've been just having conversations and learning from people. I'm not quite ready to do an exit plan for a farm, but there's some generalities, of course, but
Right.
there's some uniqueness that will come up to that. And so at that point, you know, yeah, I guess I've answered your question. I was just being more long-winded than I needed to be.
No, 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 no. That's, yeah, perfect. So one thing I want to circle back on was something about when it comes to business evaluations. I mean, that's something, because I just had Jeremy Bernstein on, actually just the other day, and I was kind of, I don't know anything about business evaluations at all, and it was like a fire hose of information. It was like, so, but wow, all the info. But so how do you get involved in that? I mean, when do you get like on the evaluations on business and stuff, and your exit planning and all that?
So again, mine are informal. And the
Okay.
reason why I'm stressing that is it's I wouldn't put this before court or the IRS
Right.
and say it's
Right.
worth XYZ. And that's where a
Right.
person like a Jeremy
Right.
Bernstein And I know a couple others in the valley, but Jeremy's a good guy as well. So it's just again for planning purposes. Where a person, something like I will refer out to, like a Jeremy Bernstein is, um, there's a buy sell, and we are a mature business, and they have
Oh,
not had it evaluated. This is
oh,
as recently. That's where it needs to be, because that's going to be, you don't want the IRS to determine the value for you.
right.
You want to be able to know, because if it's X and they think it's Y, and you may be paying more taxes.
Oh,
So when you're getting ready to, if you're 3 years out from a quote unquote sale, looking at a formal one. If you have buy sells, especially on the mature side, so like the person I mentioned earlier last night, there's young startup. I don't think we need one right now to do that. There are parameters in there, and we'll set some things in. But as they mature, it's definitely going to be very, very important to get that kind of squared away for them. So that's kind of where my role is from a planning perspective. I'll do an informal one and then at that point, depending on where they're at in the stage of their side business cycle, I'm sending it off to a person like Jeremy.
cool. Okay. Hey, so that kind of helps me better understand what you do. And again, it seems like one, you're just helping people have the conversation, first of all, that
Mhm.
um about, what that yes, someday your business is gonna, like you said, either they're gonna do it themselves or be forced to do it, but they're gonna somehow leave their business.
Mhm.
And so you're just there helping them, kind of steering them in the right direction, and then also coordinate the different resources, experts, to help them kind of steer the ship in the right direction.
Yeah, I'd say that's a good summary.
Yeah, kind of. So is it that I kind of would try to go over several things today. Is there anything else you can think of that I didn't cover that you do that you maybe
No, I mean, we've touched on a lot of things, and
okay,
again, I wear many different hats outside of maybe if someone wants a complimentary buy sell review, I can do that um, as well. So that's just kind of a value add that I add. So they don't
okay,
even have to be a client, just something that's like, hey, let's see if there's any holes. Because point being is if they're not following through on their business buy sell planning, excuse me, there could be consequences, and it's their buy sell, it's not mine, or
right.
it's their parameters. So that would be the only thing I could add to this for today for the listeners. If they have a business and have a business partner, be happy to do a complimentary business buy sell evaluation.
And what is because I don't I'm so what is that? The
A buy sell, that's a good point. A buy sell agreement is an agreement between two parties on who's going to buy the business or sell the business based off of triggering events. So death, divorce,
okay.
disability,
Okay.
disqualification, retirement. Those kind of the 5 Ds kind of go into that. I know retirement's not a D, but those kind of things. If there's a triggering event, what do you want to do with your shares?
Okay.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, 'cause I've heard that before too. Yeah. That by if you're got a partner, get a buy sell agreement because stuff can go wrong fast. And you need to have that in place so that there everybody's memories are helped with those things.
And I think you do it during the honeymoon
Yeah.
phase, because when those storms come, and inevitably they
Yeah.
will, you want to have something in place, because if bad blood comes out of it, then you have
Yeah.
something that's concrete. We agreed to this. You don't have to worry about, dissolving a business because it wasn't put together properly. And as a side note, even single owner businesses can do a one-way buy sell to a competitor
Oh.
maybe, or somebody in the complementary business to say, hey, if something happened to me, would you want to buy my business?
Oh.
So you can still do that even on a one way. So it's kind of a
That
neat.
is kind of, I've never even thought about that. So yeah, I mean, if you, yeah, these that way you can pass on. I mean, yeah, maybe some health thing comes up with an owner that
Hmm.
makes the person leave really fast. What, maybe a competitor you have a good relationship might be able to buy you out.
Yeah.
In fact, speaking of that, now you mentioned that, I know an owner here in town that he told me he every year he goes to coffee with all of his competitors
Oh, nice.
and throws out that, hey, if you ever get tired, I'd be willing to buy you.
Okay. Okay.
I thought that was pretty good, a pretty good idea.
It is definitely, and it's, I mean, there's enough business going around that you can still be friendly competitors.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, perfect. Hey, how would people get a hold? And I'll have it in the show notes too. But what would be the best way if someone reach out to you to
Yeah,
get a hold of
definitely.
you?
Email is probably the
Okay,
easiest, just because I can respond to that a little easier.
okay,
But that's Joseph at strategicwealthdesigns.com. I know I've got the world's longest email, but again, it's Joseph at strategicwealthdesigns, so plural with an S.com, or 208-604-3162 is the phone number.
perfect. And it's behind you too there, so it makes it easy for
Yes,
them to see that
absolutely.
too. So awesome. Well, thank you very much. This has been another episode of Treasure Valley NIA Quick Tips, and appreciate it. Till next time. Thanks, everybody.